math with Mr. B. It's fun for you, and it's fun for me. You did your homework, now you got a test. We're gonna review so you can be your best.
Okay, here we are with problem 1. So the question says to rewrite each fraction as a percent and each percent as a fraction. We're going to show our thinking with pictures or labeled calculations. So I'm going to go ahead and just do it with labeled calculations. So we're starting with letter A. It says 2/5. So we're going to have to write this as a percent. I know that 2 over 5 means 2 divided by 5. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do that division. So I'm going to put 2 on the inside. I'm dividing it by 5. I know that 5 cannot go into 2 a whole time, so I put a decimal point and a 0. And 5 goes into 20 4 times with no remainder, because 4 times 5 is 20. It gives me 0. So now I know that 2/5 is 0.4, and finally I need to make it into a percent. I know that percents are out of 100, so I move my decimal place over 2 spots. There's my new decimal, and that means that I'm going to have 40%. We'll box our answer. Awesome. Okay, letter B, we have 45%. So this time we're actually going to go backwards. We're going to have to write it as a fraction. So I have 45%. Again, like I said before, I know that 45% is out of 100. So I'm going to write it as 45 over 100. And I'm not quite done yet because I can simplify this. I can divide both the top and the bottom by 5, which I'm really dividing by 1. And 5 goes into 45 9 times. I know that 5 goes into 100 20 times. 9 over 20. Can't reduce it anymore. There's my fraction. All right, letter C, 120%. We're going to do it just like we did the last one. I'm going to put 120 over 100. I'm going to look to reduce. I know that 20 goes into 120. I know it also goes into 100. So I'm going to divide both top and bottom by 20. 20 goes into 126 times. And 20 goes into 105 times. 6 over 5. I can also write that as 1 1/5. I personally like improper fractions, but I know some people like mixed numbers. We'll box the whole thing because they're both good. Okay, and last one for number 1. 21 over 40. I'm trying to write this as a percent. I'm going to go ahead. I'll divide this one as well. We'll just stay consistent with A. So I'm going to go 21 divided by 40. And I know that 40 cannot go into 21, so I put a decimal point. And I bring down a 0. And then I know that 40 times 5 is going to give me 200. So I'm just going to go 5 times. 5 times 40 is 200. Subtract. Now I have 10 left over. I could bring down another 0. 40 goes into 100 2 times. 2 times 40 is 80. 20 left over. Bring down another 0. And like we said before, because we figured that earlier, 40 goes into 200 5 times with no remainder left over. So again, we have the decimal 0.525. I want to make this as a percent, so I'm going to multiply by 100. I move the decimal over 2 spots, and it is 52.5%. Okay, on to question 2. Question 2 asks us to rewrite each fraction below as an equivalent fraction and as a percent. So I'm going to go and do the equivalent fraction first, and then we'll do the percent. So start with 5 over 20. I see that I have a number that goes into both the top and the bottom. 5 will go into both 5 and 20. So I can divide them both by 5. And that's going to give me 1 on the top and 4 on the bottom. I have 1/4. And now I need to write 1/4 as a percent. I'm going to go ahead and do this one as a fraction first. So I know the percents are out of 100. So I'm going to try to make my denominator 100. 4 times what equals 100? 25, right? So 4 times 25 is going to give me 100. So I need to multiply the top by 25. That gives me 25 over 100. So I know that that must be 25%. All right, letter B, 9 over 25. I need an equivalent fraction first. Is there anything that goes into both 9 and 25? No, there is not. There's no number that goes into both 9 and 25. So I'm going to have to go the opposite direction. So we're going to make it bigger. So if I multiply the top and bottom by the same number, I'm going to use 2. 9 times 2 gives me 18, and 25 times 2 gives me 50. Now I need to make it 8%. I actually realize I'm halfway to making mine a percent because I already have 50 in the denominator. So let's go ahead and multiply them both by 2 again. 18 times 2 gives me 36, and 50 times 2 will give me 100. And I know that since percents are out of 100, this must be 36%. And finally for this problem, letter C, 9 over 6. I need an equivalent fraction. I know that 3 goes into both, so I'm going to divide them both by 3. 3 goes into 9 3 times, and it goes into 6 twice. So I have 3 halves. I know that 3 over 2 is the same as 1 and 1/2. And I know that a half is 0.5. So I can write this as 1.5. Or as a percent, 150%. I just move that decimal over 2 spots. All right. Okay, question 3. They're asking us to complete this portion web here. They give us that there's 40%. We need to come up with a fraction form, a decimal form, and then in the middle, we're going to write it in either words or pictures. So remember, the whole idea of the portions web is to show you that you can write any number as all 4 of these things: a fraction, a decimal, a percent, and then words or pictures, which I'm counting as one thing. We start with 40%. I think the easiest one for me right off the bat is just to say, if I know it's 40%, then as a decimal, I need to divide by 100. So I take my decimal, which is here, and I move it back 2 spots. And I know then that that will be 0.4. So I can go over here to where my decimal belongs, and I'm going to write 0.4. Now I want to do a fraction. So again, I'm going to start with my percent, and I know that percents are out of 100. So I write my number 40. I write it out of 100. I have a fraction form already, but I'm going to reduce that as well. So I know that 20 goes into both these numbers. So 20 goes into 40, 20 goes into 100. It goes into 40 2 times, and it goes into 100 5 times to make 2/5. So my fraction is 2/5. And we need to write it in words or pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do 2/5 as a picture. I think thinking of it as the fraction form when you do the picture is easiest. So I'm going to draw myself a little rectangle here. And I'm going to split it into fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to go ahead and color in 2 of them. There we go. There's 2/5. There's our portions web. Okay, we're on number 4. Now I have it reformatted so that the video looks a lot better. We want to find each sum. It means we're going to add these 2 fractions together. Before we do that, we need to change the denominators so we have a common denominator. I know that both 5 and 3 go into 15. So I'm going to turn 3/5. I'm going to multiply both the top and bottom by 3. I'm going to go ahead and write it below here. That's going to give me 9/15. And for 1/3, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 5. Remember, this is just a giant 1. I'm just multiplying by 1 just to change what it looks like. And that's going to be 5 over 15. And now I can easily add my numerators. 9 plus 5 gives me 14 over 15. Awesome. All right. Letter B, same task. We're still finding the sum. We have 5/7 plus 1/2. Again, I need a common denominator. I'm going to use 14 because 2 and 7 both go into 14. Multiply both of these by 2. It's going to give me 10 over 14. Over here, I'm going to multiply both of them by 7. And that's going to give me 7 over 14. 10 plus 7, 17 over 14. And if you like mixed numbers rather than improper fractions, we can write that as 1 3/14. So both those are good. All right, final one for number 4, letter C. we have 1/6 plus 2/8. Both these numbers actually go into 24. So I'm going to multiply this side, I'm going to multiply them both by 4. That'll give me 4 over 24. And then 2 over 8, I'm going to multiply both of them by 3. And that's going to give me 6 over 24. Add them together, 10 over 24. 2 goes into both these numbers, so I'm going to divide them both by 2. And I get 5 over 12.